forthcoming fighting season could be final chapter in conflict. Military analyst Sean Bell weighs in on reports that Russian military forces are redeploying, and that Moscow's attention must now shift from offense to defense in preparation for the anticipated Ukraine counteroffensive. In anticipation, perhaps fear, of Western support for Ukraine's much-anticipated spring offensive, Russia has spent the past few weeks throwing wave after wave of attacks against a heroic and determined Ukrainian frontline. Progress has been limited, and despite 7 months of intense fighting, cities like Bakhmut have not fallen. Now, Russia appears closer to culminating. The tempo of attacks has fallen by over 80%. The Wagner Group of mercenaries is still making painfully slow progress in the north of Bakhmut, but the Russian army is struggling to replace losses and is running short of ammunition and ideas. Momentum has been lost, and the Russian military desperately needs an operational pause. Reports also suggest that many Russian military forces are redeploying, leaving the mercenaries to their fate in Bakhmut. If true, Russia recognizes that its attention must now shift from offense to defense in preparation for the anticipated Ukraine counteroffensive. Ukraine too has sustained huge casualties. However, if Ukraine is to liberate its territory, any offensive must be swift and decisive to exploit the evident exhaustion of the Russian army. Any offensive, even if successful, will ultimately run out of steam, and certainly before liberating the whole of Ukraine. However, Western military support is fragile. There are already growing signs that the supply of smart weapons is at best limited, and at worst, coming to an end. Furthermore, China has a growing influence over Russia, and will not want to see the war drag on with the growing risk of unintended consequences. There is also limited Western appetite to extend a war that most believe Ukraine cannot win, and Russia cannot lose. And, the West will not want China claiming credit as a peacemaker. Ukraine will start its offensive with an impressive arsenal of Western high-tech weapons, but what will be achieved on the battlefield? Both sides will likely end the year exhausted, perhaps with a revised front line, but in a virtual stalemate, as neither side will have the resources, men or material, to make a decisive move. At that stage, the West will face a choice: continue supporting a prolonged conflict with diminishing resources, which risks favoring Russia's long-game strategy, or bring pressure to bear, on both sides, to secure an end to the bloodshed and focus on rebuilding Ukraine. The stakes could not be higher for Ukraine. The stage is set for what could be the final chapter of this conflict. In Russia, Moscow has launched a new campaign to try and tempt new recruits into the ranks of their armed forces. Adverts promise cash bonuses and other benefits. Recruiters are making cold calls to eligible men, and enlistment offices are working with universities and social service agencies to lure students and the unemployed. As fighting grinds on in Ukrainian, the Kremlin's war machine badly needs new recruits, but denies a new call-up is planned. The last round of call-ups, bringing in 300,000 reservists, sent panic through the country in September, since most men under 65 are formally part of the reserve. Tens of thousands fled Russia rather than report to recruiting stations. Russian media report that men across the country are receiving summonses from enlistment offices. In most of those cases, men were simply asked to update their records. In others, they were ordered to take part in military training. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said last week that serving summonses to update records in enlistment offices is usual practice and a continued undertaking,